Okay, well, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's Choose Life Cafe. I am Allie Donahue, the Client Relationship Manager over at Choose Life Marketing, coming to you with another amazing episode of Cafe. This week we have Marcie Little, who is on our team here at Choose Life. She is behind the scenes doing all of those amazing social media posts and all other great content that comes to you guys. So, Marcie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
We're so happy to have you. And Marcie is doing something really amazing. So we're going to talk a little bit, Marcie. I want to dive into kind of some of the things that we've been dealing with at Choose Life with Facebook, some of the censoring that's been happening. But I also want to learn more about Colorado for Life. So Marcie has started this amazing group out in Colorado and is going to share with us kind of what it is and how that started. So I'm going to start us in prayer and then we'll dive in. So God, we just thank you for this time together. We pray that your Holy Spirit would guide Marcie and I's conversation. Pray, God, that any technical difficulties that may get in our way, that you would just set those aside and that you would just anoint this meeting that we're having today. And I pray, God, that its message would just glorify your kingdom, and whoever needs to hear it, that they would be enlightened by this message of love and truth. And God, we pray specifically for Colorado. We pray for the work that Marcie is doing in Colorado. And I also pray for Marcie as she's a bold warrior for you in this fight for life. And so, God, I just ask all of these things in your name, and we love you and we praise you. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, Marcie, tell us a little bit about you. We know that you work for Choose Life, but yeah, tell us where you're at and all of those great things.
Yeah. So I grew up in Georgia. I live in Colorado now. I've lived here for the last 7 years. And if any of you are familiar with those two states, you know, Colorado is a little different than Georgia. Politically, pro-life versus abortion issues, they're just very different states. So I originally moved out here for a job several years ago, and then decided to stay because of community and just the people here. And a little over a year ago, started working with Choose Life Marketing, which I'm just thrilled. I love this job so much. So I'm part of the remote team out here in Colorado Springs.
Awesome. So tell us your why. You know, we all are pro-life, and I feel like there's always a story there. And some of us grew up pro-life, and that's great. But beyond just, you know, that initial, like, this is what I think, how did you get so involved? Because obviously, not only are you dedicated to that in your professional life, your personal life also has a lot of activities that revolve around the pro-life world. So I'd love to know your why for being pro-life.
Yeah, so I am one of those people. I've always been pro-life, but had not ever really acted it when I was in high school. I did a couple of like the Right to Life speech competitions, but it really wasn't until I moved to Colorado for another pro-life job. It was interesting timing. I moved here in March of 2013. And if anybody remembers what was happening in March of 2013, it was the Kermit Gosnell trials. And so every day I would go into work and I would read these news stories on Live Action News, because they were one of the only news organizations covering it, them and the other pro-life organizations, obviously. And I just came in and every day, and I would just I was sick to my stomach reading about the women who went to Kermit Gosnell's clinic. He was the infamous abortionist in Philadelphia. I'm sure everyone here knows who he is. And what broke my heart and what really opened my eyes to the enormity of this issue is I couldn't get this question out of my mind. Why didn't any of the women who walked into his center with just all of the horrible conditions in there, why did none of them just turn around and walk back out? And to me, that showed the desperation that they felt and just the hopelessness of they really didn't feel like they had alternatives and other options. And so that's what sparked all of my passion for pro-life today, is wanting women to know they don't have to choose abortion. They have other options. Here for a while, in between some jobs, and just loved getting that inside perspective of what you guys do every day and the women you serve. But that really is what opened my eyes and opened my heart to this issue and has driven me and inspired me ever since.
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to jump right in. So you're out in Colorado, and we know that the abortion laws out there are few and far between, if there are any. And I would love to know kind of what you have started out there.
Yeah, so we have one abortion law on the books, and it's that minors have to have parental consent before getting an abortion. But as we all know, there are many workarounds to that. So otherwise, we don't have any laws. I learned after moving out here, I didn't know that Colorado was the first state to legalize abortion, and that we did it even before Roe v. Wade, several years before Roe v. Wade. So Colorado legalized abortion in 1967. And since then, we've had no restrictions. And coming from the state that I did, I was like, how is this possible? So I started digging in, and I've always been involved on the cultural side of this issue, never saw myself really jumping in on the political side, but a friend of mine encouraged me to go to this workshop back in February of this year. And it was just a workshop, like an all-day workshop about grassroots political activism. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to be in Colorado, I should be part of the change here. And I didn't really even go in with a pro-life perspective. I didn't go in with any agenda. I just was like, I'm going to go and learn, and then maybe I can help out with campaigns or something, was my thinking. And then throughout the day, at one point in the day, the instructor, who is a former state legislator here in Colorado, had us all go around the room, and there were probably 30 or 40 of us, and say our names and what our number one issue is. And so when my turn came around, I said, pro-life is my number one issue. And there were a couple other people there. So the three of us kind of were chatting and brainstorming a little bit afterwards, and we're talking to the instructor, and he was like, well, there really aren't a lot of pro-life political groups in Colorado, because that had also been my hesitation. Like, I don't need to start another group. There's so many groups doing so many things. And he was like, they really aren't using this political strategy to try to change laws. So in Colorado, what happens a lot is we'll have these special issues come up every few years, and we'll try to get ballot initiatives passed. There's one that we're trying to get passed this year. But there aren't many groups focused on long-term political change in the state of Colorado. So I had a lot of conversations with the Lord about this. Two people, and I was hoping one of my co-founders, Christine, would be able to join us today, but she has a little one who needs her attention right now. So, but we started working on it then, and then coronavirus hit. And so we had several months to just flesh out what do we want to do, which is what I'll talk about here in a minute. But as of June 1st, we filed all our paperwork to be a 501c4, and we have two kind of primary objectives. We want to see laws changed because I'm not going to get this quote exactly right, but in one of Martin Luther King's speeches or letters that he wrote, he talked about, people say we can't legislate morality, but we can legislate behavior, and we can keep people through our laws from doing evil and wrong things. So even if we still need to do work on the cultural side, which we do, we can still put laws in place that restrict people's behavior. So kind of with that mindset, we're like, we still want to work on the cultural side, but we want to see pro-life laws passed in Colorado. And we know from other states, you can pass a lot of laws before it gets taken to the Supreme Court and challenged there. We would love to get to a place where we could pass a law here that would be challenged at the Supreme Court, but we have a long way to go. So that's one of our objectives, is to work with the voters of Colorado to elect pro-life people. We have a few that we can count on, but our governor, unfortunately, is not one of them. So we have a lot of work to do just getting people in place, but then also helping those legislators draft legislation and push that through. So we want to follow the political process there. The second kind of secondary or second objective that we have is to elevate the work of pregnancy centers. I think that's a key component as a lot of people will say, oh, well, you want to pass all these laws, but what's going to happen to the babies once they're born? Or what about these poor women? And my response always is, there are amazing pregnancy centers that are there who provide these resources every single day. So as we're working here in Colorado, we want to elevate the work of the Colorado pregnancy centers, which I know there are so many. I think nationally, what is it like? Pregnancy centers outnumber abortion clinics 3-1. And I would assume that's the case in Colorado too. Like, there are just so many more pregnancy centers, and people don't hear about them enough. So I know, like, that's why I'm passionate about my job here at Choose Life Marketing, is that we get to do that. But that's also a key component of what we want to do, is to be able to say, as we're trying to get all these pro-life laws passed, women do have a place to go and look at all these centers. So that's kind of the big picture of what Colorado for Life is. Christine does an amazing job with our social media and getting the word out that way. And like I said, we're just getting started. We started in June of this year and are trying to help out however we can with the late-term abortion issues we're facing in Colorado right now. So, yeah.
So Marcie, yes, I saw a post that you guys put out, and it was very striking to me, and it said, "End birthday abortions." Can you tell us a little bit more about that post and what that, relates to, and kind of why you guys posted that?
Yes. So, and I will say, in case anybody else sees this video that has questions, we did have to set up a separate issues committee to be able to talk specifically about the ballot initiative, because that's how our Secretary of State does things here. But yeah, in birthday abortions is an issue committee we set up because a lot of people don't understand what late-term abortion is. As I have more conversations with people, or as I've been posting more lately on social media about it, people will come back and they're like, but a late-term abortion is like 12 to 21 weeks. And I'm like, no, like, it's after 22 weeks. Like, that's a late-term abortion. So we just were realizing people don't understand what this is. And I think because it's been a nationally debated issue for so long, people just tend to gloss over when they hear that term.
Right.
And so we wanted something that would be arresting and that would force people to think about what a late-term abortion actually is. And the reason we have this proposition on the ballot, it's set at 22 weeks, so it would restrict abortions beyond that point. And the reason they chose that is because there have been babies who have survived outside the womb at 22 weeks, even though the likelihood of them surviving goes up the farther you go into pregnancy. Obviously, there have been babies who have survived. So we wanted to push the issue. Like, when you talk about late-term abortion, you're talking about viable babies. And in Colorado, it's legal for women to have abortions through their due date. No restriction. And Colorado, sadly, is known as an abortion tourism state, which means women come from other states to get abortions. So this happens like other states that restrict late-term abortions. It also was happening earlier this year when Texas said no more abortions during COVID. The Planned Parenthoods here were bragging about the number of women coming up from Texas to get their abortions. So we just, it's unreal to me. I think there are only 7 other states that have this extreme level of abortion tolerance in their states and in their laws. And then there are only a handful of countries around the world that allow this. So it's time for Colorado to do better, and do better for our babies and the moms in the state.
Absolutely. Well, Marcie, tell us, a little bit about the work you guys are doing. So you've got a really great social media presence, and you guys are working hard to kind of spread the word. What does that look like from a grassroots perspective? And if there's folks, in Colorado, or maybe they're not in Colorado, but they want to get involved, what would that look like for them?
Yeah. So one of the things we're trying to do is grow our email list. Part of the reason for this is, you mentioned earlier, some Facebook censorship. And we just think of these big social media platforms. So that's part of what we're doing, is just getting people to sign up who are interested in volunteer opportunities down the road, or just want to keep track of what we're doing and want to be involved in some way. We also are just trying to get grassroots involvement. So I'm located in Colorado Springs. One of our other founders is in Manitou Springs, which is a little bit west of here. And then Christine is up in Parker. So we're spread out across the state. We're trying to just spread the word. Like, this isn't a Colorado Springs issue. This is a whole statewide issue. So we would love for people to sign up for those emails. A big part of what we're doing here at the beginning is just education. Most Coloradans don't even realize how extreme abortion is here. So we're trying to get the word out about that. And I'm grateful that people are seeing this on our ballot out here, this Prop 115, to realize like, oh, we really don't have any restrictions on abortion. So a lot of what we're doing right now is education. Once the legislative session begins, we have a couple of state reps and state senators who will work with us to put some legislation forward. Again, we know it's not going to go very far these first couple of years since our governor is not friendly to these, but we want to start getting people on record. Like, how are you going to vote on these issues so we can put that in front of voters in a couple of years as well. So that's, one of our biggest things to begin with is just educating Coloradans and educating voters on this is where your legislators stand. So if you stand over here, here are some other people you can try to vote into office. So it's, our heartbeat is always going to be education and getting voters informed on the issues and their legislators, but we will have down the road some action and volunteer opportunities for people as well.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about kind of where your goals are for this, like in a couple years or in, 5 years, like where do you see Colorado for life? I wouldn't say Coloradans, but Colorado for life. Like, where do you guys want to go? And what is your big goals, big missions down the road?
So one really big goal, and Christine is like so fired up about this one, and she has to remind me because I guess I think small sometimes, is she's like, we need to do this so then we can teach other states how to do it. And like awesome. Even maybe start a national group that would support states in this method. So that's like way down the road. And I am like, I can see us doing that. I need to wrap my mind around Colorado first. So our vision, our mission is, I'll just read you our mission statement, is to promote the dignity of innocent human life and promote the flourishing of mothers and their. We want women to flourish. We want them to know they have resources and options. And we want Colorado to be a safe place for them because we know as long as abortion is legal, women are going to be pressured into that option. It's one of the top reasons women give for having abortions. So our thinking is if we can restrict that ability, then even if the people in that woman's life are not going to come around her and support her, as we're elevating the work of pregnancy centers, women will be able to get connected to the resources they need because the framework is already there for that. The pregnancy centers already exist and we work with a lot of them, and I'm so grateful for the work they do here. But people don't, we need other people to know about them so they can refer women to them. So that's our vision, that we would be able to restrict abortion activity as much as possible while Roe v. Wade is still in place, but also elevate the work of those pregnancy centers so women can flourish and can feel like they truly have other options.
Amazing. I love it. And I'm excited for you guys as you kind of take on this adventure. And the Lord is paving the way, as you can see, with so many of the things that you guys have already done and already accomplished. And I'm excited to see where it goes. So Marcie, I want to dive into another topic that I think has been huge, and we've experienced it here at Choose Life, and you've been on the front lines of it. We have been, I would say, disabled, censored. Lots of words come to mind when we talk about Facebook and really that pro-life message. And I would say that it's not just Facebook, it's far more reaching. Other platforms this has happened on, and it seems to be increasing. And it's not just us, it's other pro-life organizations that are being censored. So can you just tell us a little bit about kind of what happened and maybe about some other situations that you guys have heard of and learned through this process?
Yeah, so Thursday morning, one of our team members who manages all of our ad accounts for all of our pregnancy centers on Facebook logged into our Facebook business manager, and there was this big message across the top, like, your account has been restricted. And she was like, oh no, what does this mean? So Facebook they were very vague about why it was restricted. They just said we had violated some of their advertising policies. So Anna let us know right away. And she and I like scoured through the advertising policies. Like, what could we possibly have done wrong? Like we do the same thing all the time. Like, what did we do? So of course we couldn't find any that we had violated. And, so there was an option to submit a manual review to Facebook. So we did that. And then, Facebook has really terrible customer service sometimes, so it's hard to get in touch with them. But after we exhausted all of those avenues and got in touch with any possible through Facebook, the message we got back from Facebook was due to COVID-19 and fewer people working, it could be several weeks before you hear back from us. And we were like, well, that's not okay, because we need to be able to run ads for our clients, and this is impacting our clients' ability to reach abortion-minded women. So we got in touch with Senator Josh Hawley, who's a U.S. Senator from Missouri, since our agency is based in Missouri, and because he's been taking this fight to Congress and the Senate. So I talked with someone from his office Friday morning, and he asked for all the details and asked for screenshots and everything like that, and sent it over to him. And Senator Hawley wrote a really sternly worded letter to Facebook asking them, what's going on. A similar thing happened to SBA List Friday, so he was able to include that in his letter too. Their ad account wasn't restricted, but a couple of their posts about Kamala Harris pro-life, anti-life record were censored. And so he included that as well. And then Saturday evening, we got a message from Facebook saying, oops, we made a mistake, basically, like, your account is open again. So we all breathed this huge sigh of relief, and we're grateful for that. Then Anna logged in on Monday morning of this week, and her ad account, so we have like our business manager account, and then we also have our like personal ad accounts that we have to log into to actually run the ads. Hers had been restricted, and it was the same message. So we submitted the same forms and everything. We have still been able to run ads. Anna's using my ad account, and if mine gets locked up, we have a whole slew of other people that she can manage the accounts from. So all of our accounts are running and everything seems to be okay, but she still hasn't gotten an answer, has submitted the same form. So I've been keeping Senator Hawley's office informed of these updates. I also have a call here in a little bit with a Colorado Congressman, Ken Buck, who's also been fighting this. So since we have team members in Colorado, and since he's looking for more information, we've been in touch with him, and I'll give them all the details this afternoon. But it's just, SBA List has a page on their website that has a whole timeline going back years of censorship, Facebook and Google censorship of pro-life organizations. And Choose Life Marketing is on there now. We've been added to their timeline. But it's an issue, and I'm grateful for people like Senator Hawley and Congressman Buck, and they're taking this fight because, as we were talking about earlier, like, yes, these are privately owned companies, but they're protected by the government as these public forum opportunities for people. So they operate as like a public square. At least that's what they say. But then they start censoring all of these voices that they don't agree with. And so I'm grateful that our political leaders are taking that fight. But in case anyone is watching and concerned about their ad accounts that we manage, fine, we've got it taken care of. But this is the fight we're up against, and this is why we're doing what we're doing in Colorado. Like, I think part of it is showing the nation and showing our leaders and showing culture, like there are a lot of us who
Right.
care about life, and we are, I do believe we're the majority. I see people's eyes opened all the time. The Colorado for Life co-founder I keep talking about, Christine, has quite a large following on social media, and she gets messages all the time from people saying, "Thank you for posting. I had no idea. I'm voting pro-life now because of what you are educating me on." So
Right.
I think by standing up to big tech, we're showing them there's a pro-life majority here, and we want to be able to voice these opinions and this truth. So
Absolutely. Well, Marcie, tell me, as we kind of talk about this censorship and, as we get into political seasons, and we won't go down that road today, but I think the real issue here, as I look at it, is kind of this persecution. We're in this time, and we have an amazing Supreme Court justice that is also being challenged and asked many questions right now, and really seeing, if she's qualified. And so I think that really brings me to this point, which one is, what do we do if we have this new Supreme Court nomination? And a lot of folks are saying, oh, Roe versus Wade gets overturned, or we push it through. What does that look like? And I guess I would love for you to talk about really what happens, God willing, when Roe versus Wade gets overturned. We need folks like you. We need it on our local level, because it doesn't mean that abortion is suddenly illegal across the country. And I think that's a big misconception, as everybody's like, oh, once we turn Roe versus Wade, we don't have to work anymore and it's all done. But I would love to hear just kind of any plans that you guys might have, or any ideas as folks kind of ponder that question. And really, I would say get ready and prepare for what might be coming.
Yeah, it's a great point. Right now, there are only a handful of states where real change would happen, and it's these states that have passed the heartbeat laws. So Georgia, Alabama, Missouri, I know has passed one, Ohio, I believe Louisiana. There are probably others that I'm missing, but their laws are currently not being enforced because of Roe v. Wade. So if Roe v. Wade were to go away, those states would be in a really great position to, at least abortion is restricted at 6 or 8 weeks in those states. Other states like Colorado that legalized before. So Colorado legalized before Roe v. Wade. I believe New York legalized before. There are a handful that went ahead and did that before Roe v. Wade came along. We have our work cut out for us. And I think that's the piece. Because we talk about Roe v. Wade so much, people think that it was like the law is abortion is legal. So if it goes away, then the opposite will be true. Well, now abortion is illegal. And really what would happen is if Roe v. Wade were overturned, the issue would go back to the states. So like I said, some states would be in a really great position, other states would not. And that was part of the reason we started Colorado for Life too, is like, we know this is going to be a fight for as long as Roe v. Wade is still in place, but we should start working now, because there's a lot we can do to prepare for that. What I've seen is like the heartbeat laws are about as close as you can get right now. And even those, like I said, are not being enforced. But it's good to have those on the books, and it's good for states to keep passing those, because then they'll keep going up to the Supreme Court for review. And that's kind of the political strategy there. But I would encourage people, if they live in other states that are similar to Colorado, or even that have some restrictions, I think the fight's going to be more intense after Roe v. Wade goes away, because people on the other side are going to feel even more threatened. That's why you see states like New York and Illinois a couple years ago making their laws even more extreme and less restrictive, in preparation for what they fear is Roe v. Wade going away. So it's good to fight now, get a head start on that, because the intensity level is gonna go up. But I would love to chat with anybody who's interested in getting something like Colorado for Life started in their states, and share, what we've learned so far. We do have a political mentor who's been so great and helped guiding us through all of this, which is helpful. But yeah, it's just going to intensify if Roe v. Wade goes away. And I think there's going to be more confusion for the abortion-minded woman. Like, what is legal in my state? Where can I go? And so, the work of pregnancy centers is never going to go away.
Right. Right.
Women are still going to have unplanned pregnancies. They're still going to feel that panic and that angst and fear. So, but I think if it goes away, we're going to need even more people in this.
Right. Right. Well, Marcie, tell me a little bit about the idea of changing hearts versus changing minds, and really kind of what that means to you and how that resonates with you. Because I think oftentimes, specifically in the political realm, we have this idea of, I'm going to change your mind, versus I'm going to reach you at your heart level and the logic will follow. And I think, at Choose Life, we are centered around messaging to the woman, because we know that that's who we want to reach. We want to reach her, and we want to touch her heart and her mind. I would love to know your thoughts on that, and kind of, share a little bit about why you think that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I was just getting started in pro-life work, I shared how the Kermit Gosnell trial was so formative for me. The other thing was learning how many women have had abortions, and that understanding kind of frames how I try to talk about the issue. Obviously, like, we get passionate and there's, we just want the truth to be heard. But I think that's really important, is understanding a lot of the people that we're speaking to, voters, or just people who follow us on social media, or people we might engage with in conversation. There's a good likelihood that the people we interact with, whether it's a woman who's had an abortion, or we're talking to someone whose sister or family member had an abortion, like, so many of the people we talk to have been impacted by this. And so when we only speak to the mind, and we only speak to the statistics or whatever, it's easy for those people, or for anyone, to kind of push that aside and say, yes, but my personal experience is, or even if they don't recognize like the pain they feel because of that abortion, I think it's really important to communicate with that pain and that person in mind. And you see that, I've been seeing this a lot lately from the pro-abortion side, as we've been trying to get Prop 115 passed in Colorado. I see stories circulating of women in heartbreaking, like truly devastating pregnancy situations. And the common theme is, well, this is why we need late-term abortion. And usually within those stories, there's something that's a little off, or like one that's been going around now. It's like, as I'm reading her story, it's like, but you didn't have an abortion. Like, you had an emergency C-section. That's not an abortion. Like, your intent was not to kill your child. So there is a lot of misinformation. So it is important to speak to that. And it is important to speak to people's minds, but it's important to speak to the heart as well. And I think one thing that I love that Choose Life does really well is sharing stories, and especially when we get to work with pregnancy centers on the donor side of their communication, we always ask, like, what stories can we share, because these speak to the hearts of the people that support you and that you're trying to reach. And I think that's really key. I think we're really good at sharing facts. We, as like the broader pro-life movement, we're really good at sharing facts, and people need that. But I think we can do a better job of sharing stories and speaking to the hearts of people who have been impacted by abortion. And I think if we come into those conversations with that understanding, it gives us more permission to share the truth. So.
Right. And I think that's so true. I think, oftentimes we're so passionate about something, and we know the head knowledge and we know the heart knowledge, and we're all in. And I love the question, why? Like, I asked you, why are you pro-life? And I've had so many conversations with pro-choice folks that I'm like, well, why are you pro-choice? And often I will say 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, it's, my sister had an abortion. I've had an abortion. I drove my college roommate to an abortion clinic. And so there's this deep emotional attachment to it. And if then we say that it's wrong, or I come to the conclusion it's wrong, right? Then all of a sudden this thing that I did, it's like, oh no, like, I'm responsible for that. And so I think as we enter into these conversations, it's just reminding everybody that we're humans, and we all have a story. And I think, there's a lot of work going on even with abortion clinic workers, and their stories. And just any of our viewers, I know that you guys have been out there, and I guess this kind of goes back to kind of my heart conversion, but if you haven't stood on the sidewalk of a Planned Parenthood or an abortion clinic in a while, like I urge you to go do that, because every time I do it, and admittedly I should do it more than I am, but it just really brings that human factor back. That these are women that are, scared to death and hurting and so afraid, and they think that this is going to solve their problems, and they think that this is going to fix things. So very passionate, as you are, as you can tell, about really reaching the heart of the issue, but also having the facts there, because we need those. They go together hand in hand so well. So awesome, Marcie. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. If people want to follow you on Facebook, you guys are pushing out amazing content right now. Where would they go to learn more about you guys?
Yep, we are facebook.com/Colorado for Life. And then on Instagram, we are at Colorado for Life Official, because there's some empty account called Colorado for Life, so we couldn't be that. But those are the two places you can find us. We're also coloradoforlife.org if people want to check out our website.
Awesome. All right. And we will post those in the comments so that you can learn more about Marcie, and we'll also keep you updated on the happenings at Choose Life Marketing. Hopefully our Facebook issues resolve here soon, but keep us in your prayers as we continue to serve our centers, and we'd love your prayers and support. So, all right. That's all I have this week. Thanks again, Marcie. Appreciate all your time and all that you do for our centers. We will be back next week on Wednesday, same time, same place at noon, and hopefully this time without some technical difficulties. All right. God bless you.